This is kind of a vlog, sort of. I just had a few things I wanted to include in this. A lot of this is just going to be about Stephen King books. So me and my partner drove around the other night. We saw a bunch of Christmas lights. That will be included in this. A little talk about some fire cider for the season, which is a folk remedy that I made for the first time. Some footage of snow and then a bookstore recently. Okay, so I'm gonna try the fire cider that I made. And so if you're curious of what fire cider is, it's a folk remedy that people have been making for many years that has a bunch of basically like fiery ingredients in it that is antiviral, it's a cold and flu preventative, and it's also used as an immune booster. And, you know, some people just think it's nonsense, but honestly, like every time I go out and when I come back, I do a shot of it. Just, you know, it's like taking Airborne or something like that, except for you make this yourself. And so a lot of the ingredients it has in it has garlic, ginger, turmeric, onion, jalapenos, lemon juice, lemon zest, fresh grated horseradish, cayenne, and rosemary. And then you fill it up with apple cider vinegar and you let it sit 4 to 6 weeks. And then it kind of just, you know, infuses and it makes a very potent mixture. And we're gonna taste that right now. So let's do a cold and flu preventative shot. All right, here's my little shot of it. And honestly, like some people tell you it tastes terrible. As someone who has drank alcohol for many years, I don't drink anymore, but if you've ever done a shot of whiskey or another straight up booze that tastes not so great, like you can do a shot of fire cider. It's still pungent though. Here we go. Oh, like you taste the garlic, it's tart, it's fiery, but also in some weird way, like I like how it tastes. It's funky though, but it's good. And also, if you guys are interested in the recipe, I'll put the recipe down below and you can check it out. But yeah, it does take about 4 to 6 weeks to make it. So that's fire cider. Let's get into it. First up, I am in the middle. No, not even the middle. I'm 3/4 of the way through the 7th book in the Dark Tower, which is the Dark Tower, the namesake of the series. And oh man, this was a doozy. I don't want to say too much if you haven't read the series, but there is a lot of emotions and feels happening as our protagonists get closer to the Dark Tower and try to save the world from, you know, being destroyed. And honestly, this is probably one of the best fantasy series I've ever read. Once I'm done with this book, me and Jason of Jason's Weird Reads will be recording an episode for his podcast, Weird Reads, about the 7th book. We've been doing each one, and there's an episode for each. I'm not sure how many are live currently. I think at least the first 5 books, at least. I don't remember if the 6th one was posted or not. And then I'll put a link down below to Jason's podcast too, if you want to go check that out. All right, what I'm going to get into, and this isn't like super immediate future, but you'll see some of the footage from the bookstore that I went to. And at this bookstore, I got some new to me books. It's a used and new bookstore. And for all 3 of these books, it was, I think, $27 for 3 in really good condition paperbacks. So I got Night Shift by Stephen King, which is a collection of his short stories. And I got this because I'm gonna do some future stuff with Jason of Jason's Weird Reads with his podcast that is Outside the Dark Tower. And that's all I'll say because I don't know if he's announced any of that or not, but I'm gonna read this either way. So also I'll tell you a little bit about Night Shift. Let's see, when was this written? Because this has some of the stories, like it has the Salem's Lot story in it. It also has the story Trucks, which is the basis for the movie Maximum Overdrive. Oh yeah, Children of the Corn is in here. All right, this was written in, it says 1976. Is that correct? Well, there's 3 dates in here. It says 76, 77, 78. Maybe that's when it was like, it had different printings, maybe. So anyways, this book of short stories, Stephen King's first collection of stories, is an early showcase of the depths that King's wicked imagination could plumb. In these 20 tales, we see mutated rats gone bad, graveyard shift, a cataclysmic virus that threatens humanity, night surf, which is the basis for The Stand, a smoker who will try anything to stop, Quitters Inc., a reclusive alcoholic who begins a gruesome transformation, Gray Matter, and many more. This is Stephen King at his horrifying best. And I never read this one back in the day, so excited to read this. So I was also saying once I finished the Dark Tower series that I wanted to read Salem's Lot. This is the first Stephen King book that I ever read. And I didn't own a copy, so now I do. And I also wanted to read it because Salem's Lot has a big tie-in with the Dark Tower series. And since it's been years and years since I read it, I wanted to go back and read it to see just how that, incorporates into the Dark Tower series. So let me tell you about this if you don't know. It's a vampire book. Ben Mears has returned to Jerusalem's Lot in hopes that exploring the history of the Marston house, an old mansion long the subject of rumor and speculation, will help him cast out his personal devils and provide inspiration for his new book. But when two boys venture into the woods and only one returns alive, Mears begins to realize that something sinister is at work. In fact, his hometown is under siege from the forces of darkness, and only he, with a small group of allies, can hope to contain the evil that is growing within the borders of this small New England town. So this was Stephen King's second novel that he wrote. As you can see, I'm going for the oldies, but goodies. Yeah, so this was my doorway into Stephen King, Salem's Lot, and I don't remember being this big. I think I read it when I was like 12 or 13. I don't know. I was probably way too young to read it. Okay, and the next one I got, basically I got all the books that are kind of a tie-in with the Dark Tower. I mean, in technicality, the Dark Tower is the center of the universe of all of King's books, but some of them play into it more than others. And one of the worlds that they come into in the Dark Tower series is the world that The Stand took place in. And The Stand is basically, they come into the world after everything's like gone and destroyed and like dust, basically. The world had moved on. And so The Stand, which is giant and is one I've never read. There's so many I haven't read that I need to read. So I got this one. I had only planned to look for the one book, and then this bookstore that I went to just had all the Stephen King books and they were at a decent price, so had to pick them up. So The Stand, if you don't know what The Stand is, I will tell you about it. And they had two different covers of this, and the one that wasn't like the movie cover or the TV adaptation, I didn't, this one was actually better. Usually I don't go for the TV/movie covers. I usually like the original, but the one that they had was like just like a dark cover with someone's mouth biting a bullet, and it just looked kind of meh. So I thought this one was cooler. All right, so The Stand. Stephen King's apocalyptic vision of a world blasted by plague and tangled in an elemental struggle between good and evil remains as riveting and eerily plausible as when it was first published. A patient escapes from a biological testing facility, unknowingly carrying a deadly weapon, a mutated strain of superflu that will wipe out 99% of the world's population within a few weeks. Those who remain are scared, bewildered, and in need of a leader. Two emerge. Mother Abigail, the benevolent 108-year-old woman who urges them to build a peaceful community in Boulder, Colorado, and Randall Flagg, the nefarious dark man who delights in chaos and violence. As the dark man and the peaceful woman gather power, the survivors will have to choose between them and ultimately decide the fate of all humanity. And Randall Flagg is the man in black, who was also known as Walter in the Dark Tower series. So there's another book too that I want to get, The Eye of the Dragon, which I at this time of year, it's almost Christmas. I couldn't afford to buy more than 3 books. Had I known how good this bookstore was, I would have tried to have more money, but I couldn't because Christmas. Spent all my money. All right. That is what I'm going to be getting into in the future. Thank you for coming along with me to check out Christmas lights and hear about all the Stephen King that I'm going to be reading and am finishing up and all that good stuff. And if you're a fan of videos where I talk about multiple things that I'm reading or have read, the next video coming up will be about that. So stick around, check it out. And if you enjoyed hanging out today, hit that subscribe button, come back, see me again, and we'll talk about more bookish things and weird stuff.